I'm Shannon from Shannon Fraser Designs. I'm a modern quilter and pattern designer based out of Montreal, Canada. I like to call myself the accidental quilter because I had completely discounted quilting as something that I would be interested in. It wasn't until I had been sewing for several years and I eventually stumbled upon a tutorial on how to make half square triangles. And I got curious and decided to make one, then two, and before I knew it, I was well on my way to making my first quilt. That is almost 10 years ago now, and I thank my lucky stars that I didn't let myself continue believing that quilting wasn't for me. What I discovered is that, our interests evolve and change as we grow, and I think that that's a lesson that I come back to time and time again, not just in life in general, but also within my quilting practice. That, things that we may have thought that are not for us later on in life, or as things change and we evolve, sometimes they do become interesting to us. And so I like to use this as a reminder for myself regularly to stay open and stay curious about things that I may have discounted, or new things that come across my path that, just because it was something that I didn't think I would be interested in doesn't mean that I won't be now. I'm super thankful that I stayed curious and I stayed open to reevaluating how I saw quilting, because I discovered the joy that there is to be had in quilting. And it was that discovery of half square triangles is what led to my discovery of finding my creative home. I have been hooked hooked on quilting ever since, and I find so much joy and a lot of fun challenges within my quilting practice. So I feel very lucky to have found this creative outlet, and it's something that I cherish and that I want to nurture for years to come. I was talking with a quilty friend the other day, and I was saying how I don't want to get bored and I don't want to lose that spark of creativity that gets me excited to dive into a new project. And when I really thought about it, what I love about quilting is the fact that the quilting world is so vast. There are so many different paths that we can explore within the quilting world, whether that's traditional quilting or modern quilting or foundation paper piecing, EPP. And, there's just so many different techniques and different styles that we can explore. And I think that's really encouraging and fun, because it means that there's no end for our fun, that to keep us engaged and keep us exploring and keep us challenged. And so I like to take a step back and look at my quilting practice as a whole and think about how I want that to look on a go forward basis. I remember several years into my quilting practice that I posted a new quilt I had made, and one of the comments was, "Oh, like another one," as if they were feeling almost pressured to keep up with the quilts that I was making. And it got me thinking way back when about the impact that I have on others when I'm sharing my quilts and my projects, and the impact that others have on me when I'm seeing what they're sharing. And I think that, in a world that's lived more and more virtually and more on social media, I think that it can have an influence, both positive and possibly negative, on how we perceive our own quilting practice, and the number of quilts that we need to make and the speed at which we create them. And so I wanted to take some time today to just kind of share a little bit more about my philosophy on how I look at my quilting practice. And I hope that it encourages you to look at your own quilting practice and think through how fast, how slow you want to be engaging and creating your projects. And so I actually have this mousetrap quilt hanging behind me, and I've done that on purpose because this quilt was, from a business standpoint, I should not have hand quilted her. I really needed this quilt finished by December of last year, and I'm just getting her finished now. I actually am still waiting for my binding fabric to show up so I can get the binding on her and fully have her done. But the reason why I wanted to share this quilt story with you is because when I was preparing this quilt, this is just to kind of position you and give you an understanding of where this one comes from. I designed the Mousetrap Block of the Month quilt pattern as a skill builder challenge for anybody who wanted to take it on. And there's 4 different abstract versions, and this is version 4. And when I was designing the quilts, one of the things that I always like to think about is not only the piecing adventure, but also how you're going to quilt the quilt at the end of the day. And you might notice there's quite a bit of negative space in this one. And one of the things that I kept seeing when I was looking at this particular version was I kept seeing it as being hand quilted, not machine quilted. And from a practicality standpoint, as I mentioned, I needed her done by December of last year. And so hand quilting I knew would never be done in time for the December timeline. But I kept getting these urges to hand quilt her. Every time I looked at her, what I saw was hand quilting details. And this was for a couple of reasons. One, the quilt is all made out of woven fabric, and they have this glorious tactile feel to them. If you've never worked with wovens, they have a very yummalicious feel to them. And so this quilt already has a lovely tactile feel. And I felt that adding the hand quilting would just take it to the next level, not only in how it felt, but also in the level of texture and detail that the hand quilting would add. And so I had this internal debate going on with me. The practical side of me was like, no, Shannon, you can't hand quilt her because you're never going to have her done on time. And then the creative side of me was like, no, Shannon, you really need to hand quilt her because from a creative standpoint, that was going to make my heart sing. And I felt that it was going to do the most justice to the actual quilt. So this is where I think having these debates and understanding what is most important to you within your quilting adventures comes into play. And so for me, I let my creative side win on this one. And I'm so happy I did, because the minute I finished the hand quilting, actually even before I was done hand quilting her, I was already raving to my husband about how happy I was that I did take the time to hand quilt her. Now, it took me many months to get all the hand quilting finished, and this is where it comes back to understanding what are the priorities for you in your quilting. And for me, I really wanted to see the outcome that the hand quilting would add to the final quilt. And when I take a step back in my quilting and think about long term, when I look forward, I think, okay, well, yes, in the short term, it's going to take me a little bit longer, and I may not have a quilt to show as soon as I would have liked. But in the long term, I'm going to be really happy that I invested this time to, one, explore an idea that kept coming back to me. Two, it gave me the opportunity to actually really sit and dive into a hand quilting adventure, which I really do enjoy hand quilting. I know it's not everybody's jam, but it is mine. It also gave me the chance to show you that there's different ways that you can bring your quilts to life. So the other versions I had machine quilted. One of them I also sent out to a long armor. And so I wanted to show that there's different quilting approaches that you can take with your mousetrap quilts. And so there's multiple reasons why I ended up hand quilting this one. Bottom line, I don't regret the time that I invested in bringing this one to life and adding in all the hand quilting details. It is now quickly becoming one of my favorite quilts that I've made to date, and it gave me an opportunity to explore negative space and adding in details within those elements in a way that I hadn't done before. And so I wanted to share this specific example for you just to show you that, there's no right or wrong. I could have very well have machine quilted this myself, or even sent it out to a long armor, and the quilt would have still looked very, very pretty. It still would have been a lovely finish, but it just wouldn't have been what my creative side was really calling to explore. And so I think there's value in taking a step back and thinking about what is important to you within your creative practice. And this is going to be different for everybody. What I like to say is that there's no right or wrong in quilting. It's really what gives you the best results, brings you joy, and keeps you engaged in your quilting. And so I thought I'd give a few questions or guidance or tips that I kind of use for my own quilting to really help me stay focused on what's important in my own creative practice. When I think of my creative practice, I go back to past Shannon. So the Shannon who had discounted quilting and stayed open to the new possibilities of being open to reevaluating something that she had discounted. And I also think back to the excitement that I felt when I first stumbled upon quilting, and the joy that it brought me, and the ideas and the creative sparks that I got, and the urge to just dive in and start creating. And it's those feelings that I don't ever want to lose sight of. I don't want to lose connection to that. And so I go back to past Shannon quite a bit to really inform my decisions today, to make sure that I'm staying on track with the creative practice that I want to create for myself, and making sure that I'm not allowing external influences to dictate how I'm proceeding in my quilty adventures. So one of the things that I always like to kind of take a step back is think about, if you look forward at the year ahead, how many quilts do you want to be able to create in one given year? I think that's kind of a good barometer to start, because quilting isn't done in a day. It's one of the things that I love about it. It's the fact that we're making a long-term commitment to our creative outlet. But it's also a reality that because they're not done in a day, we need to be a little bit more mindful about planning our creative time. And so we all quilt at different rates. Some of us are speedier than others. I myself am not the fastest quilter. That's okay. A lot of people are much quicker than me. That's okay too. There's no right or wrong here. It's just understanding how quick or slow you are at making your quilts. Once you have an understanding of the speed at which you create, and then you kind of take a look at the year ahead and how many quilts you can realistically get done in a year. Some of us have more time than others to create, and so being aware and mindful of the amount of time that you have to dedicate to your craft will come into play and inform the number of quilts that you're able to make within a year. And I think that the time element is not to feel constrained. I think it's about really being realistic about the time that you have, so that you don't feel overwhelmed, so that you can properly plan your creative time and make it a priority for yourself. So when you think of it, when you take a step back, how much time do you want to spend every week working on your craft? Is it a couple of hours? Is it a couple of days? Again, it's just taking the time to be mindful of how much time you have to create. And so if it's 30 minutes a day, if it's only evenings, if it's only weekends, these are all things that can come into play and start to add the structure or guidelines within which you're going to be able to create. The next thing I always like to encourage people to think about is, when do you enjoy making? Some of us enjoy creating at night. Some of us are more morning people. Some like to sneak it in over lunchtime. Again, it's really when do you feel the most creative, and when is a time that you can consistently sneak in and be able to set aside the time for yourself. I tend to be more of a morning daytime quilter. I don't know what it is. Nighttime comes around and it's not my favorite time to quilt. I don't know why. That's just how it is for me. And so one of the things that I have done is I've very much been encouraged by two ladies. One is Marie Forleo with her create before you consume philosophy, and Cheryl Arkeson, who also has her morning makes. And both of these ladies I came across very early on in my quilting adventures, and their comments really stuck with me, that there's value in setting aside time very early in the day before your day gets away from you to focus on things that are really important. And for me, that's setting aside time for my creative practice. And so I had noticed, that by the end of the day, sometimes I'm just too tired to return to my art. And sometimes, by the time I get my day done and then get dinner on the table, it's just I'm tired, and that's just how my energy flows. And so I like to be able to, before my day gets started, know that I've already set aside time for my creative practice. And this has worked really well for myself. It doesn't necessarily mean I work on it every day. It just means that most mornings that I set aside for either hand quilting or drawing or painting or working on a new design. These are all for me, things that that's my creative outlet, and I'm making sure that I make time for myself to explore these ideas and spend time on it. So I have found morning works the best for me, but nighttime might be your go-to. Maybe that's when you come alive and you have the most time and energy to focus on your quilting, and that's okay. I think it's just making sure that you know what time feels best to you. Once you know that time, I encourage you to set aside a block within your calendar to make sure that you have that time blocked off, so that no one else is coming to interfere with your creative time, and everybody else in your family knows that this is a sacred time for you and it's an important time for you, and that you're not to be disturbed unless it's really important. So once you have an idea of the time you want to create, how much time you have to create, I think the next thing is thinking, how do you want to approach those? Are you going to be quilting them yourself? Do you want to hand quilt any of those? Are you going to be sending them out to a long armor? These are all questions and answers that will come and help you decide and inform how many quilts you can kind of sneak in within the year. And it's also, I would think, if you are planning on sending them out to a long armor, then it's good from a budgetary standpoint too, to know, well, how many quilts are you going to be sending out? When approximately will you be sending them out, in case you need to schedule some time with your long armor? Always a good thing to set aside some time with them and make sure that you're scheduled in. Aside from the number of quilts that you make and when you're going to be quilting them, I think another valuable element to consider is, what kind of techniques are you looking to explore? So there's value in understanding how you want to challenge yourself in your quilting practice. The level of challenges that we each take on will be unique to each of us, but I do encourage you to think about maybe the techniques that you want to explore within the year, or a new pattern that you wanted to try. It doesn't matter what the element is that you're wanting to focus on. I think it's just good to take some time to think through, are there some techniques that you want to explore? And is it within a pattern? Is it within just a free-form play that you want to have time for? And if it's free-form, then are you going to be scheduling those in with your morning makes, or whatever hour that you're looking to be creative? Or is it something that you're looking to explore more in a focused session that you want to take maybe a month to focus just on those quilting techniques? And so there's different ways that you can set it up, but I think that there's, again, it's being mindful about what it is that you're looking to explore within your creative practice, and making sure that you're making the time for yourself to make those explorations happen. So we looked at it from a time perspective, we looked at it from a scheduling perspective, we looked at it from a technique perspective, but you can also flip it and think about, are there fabric collections that you've been really looking to explore and have fun with? I mean, at bottom line, this is a practice that we got into because we have fun, and that's something that I never want to lose sight of, and I never want to lose connection with. And so we can find our fun in different elements, and I think it's safe to say that we're all fabric lovers here. And so sometimes that's where my creative sparks come from. It comes from the fabric collections that come out, whether that's a new substrate that I want to explore, or whether it's a specific print collection, Or maybe it's just a new color that I'm curious about exploring and adding into the color mix. So there's different ways that you can approach that, but it's again, it's just kind of taking the time to step back and think about what are the elements within your quilting that you really want to focus on and make sure that you're making the time for. And so, it's tempting, especially with social media. It's very fast paced. There's so many new fabric collections that come out. There's so many new quilt patterns that come out. And so it can be tempting to want to create the new shiny object, right? Especially if you've been working on a project that's been taking some time and you're feeling a little fatigued of working on the same project. I get that. It's one of the reasons why I like having a couple of projects on the go at the same time at various steps, so that I can, if I'm tired of hand quilting something, then I can go and work on some piecing. Or if I'm tired of just chain piecing, then I can sit and work on trimming, right? So it's fun to have different quilts at different stages so that you can keep yourself engaged in case you need to keep the boredom at bay once you've hit a step that's taking a little bit longer. Quilting is such an individual creative outlet, as much as, I mean, we have such a vast and diverse quilting community, which is lovely to be able to connect with and share our ideas with and reach out should we have like questions that pop up. But it can also feel a little bit intimidating and overwhelming when you see all of the different ideas and all the different quilts that are being made. And it can feel tempting to try and keep up with all that's going on. And that's where I think that we can start to feel overwhelmed. And I think that it can start to feel like we've bitten off more than we can chew. And so I think there comes a time where there's value in just kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, what is it that I want my quilting practice to look like? I want to know, like, how do I want to feel in my quilting practice? When I sit down to start a new project, how do I want to feel? When I'm at the tail end of a project, how do I want to feel? And so it's not just the starting part, right? Because often when we start a project, we're very excited and we've got all of the the energy to dive in. And then sometimes it's seeing it through that can be the challenge. And I think that that's where making sure that we haven't overwhelmed ourselves with too many projects at once can really help us stay the course and see our projects through. I mean, there's nothing better than actually seeing your finished quilt and being able to snuggle with it or hang it up on the wall if it's a wall art quilt. And so I want you to set up a practice that encourages you to keep making in a way that feels doable without feeling overwhelmed or without feeling like you need to keep up with the Joneses, because you don't need to keep up with the Joneses. What you need to keep up with is yourself. And so this is where I hope that this chat has encouraged you to take a moment to think about how you want your quilting to look like and how you want your quilting to feel. And, for me, I really want my quilting to feel calm. I don't want to feel overwhelmed by it. I don't want to feel like I'm scrambling to keep up. I also want to make the time for longer term projects that, and knowing that some projects are going to take a little bit longer to complete, I have to be realistic with myself that I'm not going to be able to complete as many quilts as I may want in a given year. And that's okay. That's just a decision that I need to make for myself and be okay with. I hope this has made you think a little bit more about your creative practice and what you want it to look like, and realize that there is no right or wrong here. It's really just what feels right to you. And I want to encourage you to take the time to really set it up in a way that feels good to you and gets you excited. At the end of the day, I want to have that feeling of, that feeling that makes you want to start making right now. That's the feeling that I love, and I don't ever want to lose that. And so I'm trying to find a way to set myself up and that I capitalize on those feelings as much as possible, and I harness that excitement and keep myself engaged and exploring and challenged. And this is what I want from my creative practice. And you just may want, nice, slow, easy sewing and just playing with color. And, again, that's okay. It's just about making sure that you have really taken the time to think about about what feels good to you, and that you're making the time to focus on your own challenges or elements that really get you fired up. I've created a free download for you if you want to just be refreshed about some of the questions that I've asked, some of the concepts that I've shared today. I've set it up in a way where it's a little bit of a mini questionnaire that you can help guide you through your thought process on how you want your creative practice to be. You can find the download link below and take it at your own pace. It's free to download, and hopefully it will give you the guide to think through and set up your own creative practice that feels good to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And for any questions or ongoing inspiration, you can find me at shannonfraserdesigns.com. And I always share weekly updates and inspiration from behind the scenes in my newsletter. I'll share the link to sign up for that down below as well. Thank you so much again for joining me, and good luck in your quilting adventures.